I'm Jeremy Hull, VP of Products and Services Solutions.
I'm Ben Flecha, Director of Attribution and Activation within D&I.
And we're here to talk to you about cross-device and how mobile has changed how consumers are consuming media and how we're measuring it.
So mobile has and continues to change the landscape. Now, this isn't just about marketing. Obviously, we're all here as marketers. But fact of the matter, what mobile has done the last 3 to 5 years has really changed how we live. We've become so reliant on our smartphones because of the value it has in there. We can now, in a course of 3 seconds, know the temperature in Paris. Again, I don't know why. Somebody would want it, just in case. We can have the answers to any questions we want. There's a song on the radio, we can find the exact title, the artist, when it was made, and you can even buy it within a click, within about 5 seconds. That's phenomenal. Now, because of all that value that we've seen there, consumers have made a cognizant effort within the last 2 years to say, I'm going to be always engaged. We are always on our phones. Chances are there's not a time in the day where the phone is not more than 12, maybe 16 inches away from you. Sam mentioned it in his presentation yesterday. Halfway to work. Doesn't matter what halfway is, you're turning around, you're getting that phone. You cannot go a day without it.
It's the mobile phone drive of shame.
Oh my God. That's the last thing you want, your kids or your spouse laughing at you when you walk back in, but it happens to all of us, we've all done it. I saw a note in Wired back, I think it was 06, 07 maybe, that 46% of consumers check their mobile device before even getting out of bed. This was 06. When I saw that stat, and I actually presented to a couple clients back then, I was just like, this is ridiculous, come on. I'm not gonna ask who does that now. Because the fact of the matter is, we wanna know immediately what's going on. Check the emails, see the weather, the temperature, so forth. We've become so reliant on our smartphones and our devices because of the value that they bring, that it kind of runs our lives. It's a sad thing to say. Now, if you think back to a simpler time, let's say 20 years ago, we didn't have these smartphones. And from a work standpoint, if you were working in the office or back in school, whatever it may be, if you had an issue and you left the office, that issue stayed at the office. That's not the case anymore. We are connected 100% of the time.
Now let me clarify for our clients in the room, we're more than happy to engage with you after hours. We welcome those kinds of emails. We're just being a little wistful for a moment.
Exactly.
Okay?
We chose to be connected at 100% as well. It's not just the average consumer. But the fact of the matter is, it was a simpler time. So as Jeremy said, we want to go back to a simpler time right now. I know a lot of our friends, we'd sit back 15, 20 years ago and just talk about those pop culture questions and just have a good time about it. And now we've lost the satisfaction when a group is sitting around and finally comes up with the answer to something after a half hour, because immediately we reach for our phone in 3 seconds have the answer. Then what do? Things like Magnum PI. Everyone loved that Ferrari. It was a great show. Hawaii was a great setting. What do the license plates say? I've only had one person answer that. It was crop.
And I saw several people just now instinctively reach to find the answer.
But the fact of the matter is, you get a group of people together, you start thinking, you start brainstorming, and at the end of a half hour, you got it. And there's that sense of satisfaction. So that's what we're going to do right now. We have a question. There's a handout being passed out right now. I think some of you may have actually heard this question already. So
if you know the answer, don't shout it out.
Don't worry, and we're going to help you throughout the presentation. In 1984, and I know I'm looking around, I apologize if some of you weren't born at that point. We're going to help you out, don't worry. In 1984, there were 5 albums that reached #1 on the Billboard charts. 5 albums. It's the fewest we've ever seen. It was a great year as well. Great for music. 85 was good. 83 was good. We're going to see some confusion on some of the artists. Yeah. We're going to go through this presentation and drop hints, very subtle, so please pay attention, on the songs, on the albums, the album title. We want you to write down the artist. And by the end, we're going to collect all these sheets, and someone's going to have a fun night. We have a $100 chip to have fun the last night of Vegas. One person.
Now, please, if you win this, take advantage of it and have a good time, because I'm not clear yet if I can expense that. All right? It's going to be, I don't know what category that goes under in the drop down.
Ask for forgiveness, not for permission. So, as you see, you have the questions. I can already see some minds are thinking about it, and some people probably have 2 or 3 or 4 of them.
Just listen closely. It's going to be subtle.
Don't worry. We're going to help you out. So, the growth of mobile over the last 4 years, since 2011, we've actually seen a 100% lift in adoption rates. To the point now, roughly 70 to 72% of adults 18 plus own at least one device. A lot of times two, and even upwards of three, and I feel sorry for those people. But fact of the matter is, we saw this change a couple years back. When we started seeing this data come in, we started thinking, well, the millennials are jumping on board because the millennials do what the millennials want to do. But it's not the case. Yes, 86% of millennials own a smartphone. 84% of consumers 30 to 49 own a smartphone. 83% of consumers household income 75K plus own a smartphone. This is no longer about millennials. This is about consumers as a whole. And this isn't data that's global. Wait for it. This is born in the USA data right here. Fact of the matter, consumers are spending more and more time on these devices, and they've given up that connection. They're okay being connected 100% of the time because of the value it gives them. I worked with somebody for years and years, and I always heard device agnostic. It's brilliant. That's exactly what it is. Consumers want to go that road. They want to have whatever answer. They want to answer that question immediately, and they're turning to those devices. There's a lot of data around it, and that's what we want to get into.
So now let's turn and take a look at some of our data around devices. So this next slide is going to be data pulled from DoubleClick for year to date, 2016. But what's interesting about it is it's across all bought channels. So it's not just paid search, it's not just display, it's both of those, and affiliates, and CSEs, and paid social, a number of other things, everything that is bought media split by device. So the dark green is tablet, the light green is smartphone, and the blue is desktop. And the first thing I'm going to look at is impressions. And guess what? Across all media types, there's more impressions on desktop. I think that's pretty easy to understand. It's a form factor. You got a bigger screen, or cramming more ads on there, all right? Now, what's interesting is when we go to clicks, even with far fewer impressions, smartphones see more clicks across all bought media. People are interacting with your bought media message on their smartphones at a greater rate than any other device, even though there's fewer opportunities for them to do so. Now, when we go down to the third part, this is sales, this is conversions. And here's where we get that breakdown, because you'll see the blue, far more sales on desktops when measured with a last click measurement solution. Just like Jeremy Kornfeld said yesterday, a situation like this, we know our audience is active on mobile. Even with fewer opportunities, they're interacting with our bought media. But because they're not buying right in that moment on that device, or we're not able to measure it, we're allocating our budget based on these sales, not on the consumer activity. So for the same time period, this is the budget breakdown against all bought media. 70% computers, 10% tablets, only 20% on smartphones, even though that's where the majority of your audience is. And it's because we're trapped in this measurement mindset that doesn't account for those other interaction points, not because we've decided not to, but because it just doesn't fit into our current measurement philosophy. And it reminds me of a quote by William Gibson, one of my favorite authors. "The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed." Typically, this quote is used to refer to technology as it looks on a global scale, looking at advanced markets, emerging markets, underprivileged markets, and realizing that we're the lucky few. We're the very small percentage of a percentage that are living in this technology future, and inspiring us to kind of lift up our fellow man and think globally. But I would say, while that's very inspiring, I would say it actually also fits for this challenge, because your audience is living in the future in this seamless cross-device world. But if you haven't updated your thinking to account for that, you have not caught up with them.
So what we find ourselves in is an incredibly complex situation. Some might even call it a thriller of a situation, if you will. But we can beat it. Thank you. Fact of the matter is, there we go. Fact of the matter is, consumers have the ability to connect with content across a multitude of ways. 876 million websites worldwide. 3.1 million mobile apps, 2 billion smartphones, and 6.4 billion connected devices worldwide. When we talk about amplifying content, we talk about connecting with consumers and leveraging that data. There are so many opportunities out there for that consumer to grab what they need to get from it. And the fact of the matter is they're not using one device. They're using multiple devices throughout their overall search over the course of the day or the week to get their ultimate answer. The more data we have to build that into the mix, the better we're going to be able to assess that data and find out where do we go from here. Yesterday Sam talked about by 2030, 1 trillion total connected devices and consumers. By 2030. That's an astounding number. Now, a lot of that's going to be growth with the Internet of Things. And now granted, does a smart refrigerator that tells you you need to pick up milk on the way home in a text, is there really a marketing aspect there for us? Probably not. A little creepy, but not necessarily a marketing aspect. But there's a data opportunity. And that's where we can start to understand how does the data and how we collect that data and cleanse that data, what does it provide us from an insights perspective? How do we continue to dig deeper, cleanse that data, and understand what can we do to have the consumers take the actions that we so desire? The more data we have, the better we have the opportunity to take that next step and move to a scalability approach.
So in summary of this first section, consumers have turned traditional measurement upside down with their behaviors. Now it's time for advertisers to catch up. It's almost if all the rules for the sports
Nope, keep going.
have changed, and we're saying to ourselves, I want a new drug
All right,
that'll give me these insights. Yeah?
let's go back in time real quick. Do it again.
Okay,
No?
forget it. That's all the hints you're getting.
All right.
All right, so now let's transition to what are we going to do about this. So we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about 3 things that you need to do, short-term, mid-term, and long-term, to address this problem. Now the first thing we're going to talk about is tiered planning. This next slide has been a little controversial throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's something that's a little unorthodox. It's a way of looking at things that I don't think anyone's ever done before. I'm pretty sure we're the first ones
Yeah.
to throw this out
This is
there. So, all right, you ready?
It really is.
This is a funnel. All right, so we've all seen freaking funnels before, all right? I put this up here because we have all seen it before and because, like it or not, we're comfortable with the concept of a funnel. We understand how it works, and it's just baked into our planning. We know that an engagement point down at the bottom, such as brand paid search, is going to have a higher ROI than an engagement point at the top, such as prospecting display. And we're all okay with that, and that's not a problem, and that's baked into our planning process. All right, so given that everyone gets the funnel and understands the funnel, I'm now going to unveil, Ben built this, this is amazing.
Flip it on its head.
This is, we spent the past
go.
several weeks head down working on this. The 2016 version of the funnel.
Wow. Mind blown.
Now, we joke about this, but this is the logical extrapolation based on the data that we're looking at, where your consumers are connecting with your media on their smartphones, but they may not be purchasing there as a last click metric. The challenge is mobile isn't a device, mobile isn't a channel, mobile is a mentality, it's a piece of context that goes across all channels. And we need to make sure that as we're planning and evaluating mobile success, we're looking at it through this lens. So if we're not taking this approach, we're going to crash and burn, and I know that from personal experience. So Ben laughs at me about this all the time. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about the first time that I was involved in an attribution solution. And I'm not going to name the client. Please don't name them if you know them, because I'm totally going to throw them under the bus. So this year, picture this, year 2007, and we've got an attribution plan in place for our client. We sell it in, they're excited about the technology, we get them onboarded. Then we start plugging everything together. We get the data flowing. We get our view through display coming in. We get their email data locked in. We've got our natural search data coming in. It's all flowing into this database. And then we've got all of this new attributed data. We update our daily, weekly, and monthly reports. We have brand new calculations for ROI. We completely changed our bidding algorithm and our approach to bidding. Our day-to-day client contact is thrilled. We're going back and forth. We're getting to the office early, geeking out about the data. And then about 3 months in, I get an email from his boss that says, hey, so can you send me the last 3 months of data with last click numbers? We need to do our financial planning next year. Utterly defeated because we were focused on that specific solution versus making sure everyone up to the top understood the thought process behind it and the philosophy. So this is your first piece of homework today. Make sure that you understand the solution and make sure that you're evangelizing the value of mobile and its place in the path to conversion internally so that you're setting yourselves up for these next steps for success. So the second thing you have to do is evolve your measurement. Measurement can no longer be looked at from a one-to-one spend to return approach. Instead, you've got to look at all those other points of interaction and assign a value to them. You've got to cut loose from the antiquated way of thinking. And yes, that is Kevin Bacon. Come on, okay. So there's 3 things you have to do here.
So the first approach we like to look at is the consumer actions. What are we seeing from a device standpoint? As we just walked through that new age funnel, that's going to be in every presentation from here on out the next 6 months, and we're speaking all over the place about it because it's just so fantastic. That upper funnel, that mobile side of things, consumers are engaging with your brands on their mobile device, but they're not converting. Very small conversions. Fact of the matter is, Monetate did a study back in Q4 of last year and provided click conversion rates across devices. This is fantastic. This validates everything we've been saying. What they came back with and said is click conversion rates in their e-tail setting, click conversion rates from a mobile device is less than 1% on average. Less than 1%. Now, click conversion rates on tablet and desktop, 8.5 to 9.5. It just reinforces consumers are spending time with your brand on their mobile device. They're taking it and they're converting elsewhere. I've seen a lot of studies around just overall general mobile activity coming from an e-com setting. And it's anywhere between 45–55% of traffic coming from a mobile device now. So we know they're there, we have to engage with them there, but how do we measure it? So we need a change in measurement strategy. And this is where we look at the KPIs, not key KPIs, because that would be redundant. We look at the KPIs from a standpoint of the mobile side of things. If there's a brick and mortar store, your store locator is a huge indication that they are about to take that next step to walk into that brick and mortar. If they're looking at inventory, if you have the ability to have inventory on your site, where the closest store is. I know a client here has it, and I think it's fantastic. That tells you where that action is, and that's another qualified action that we need to measure as a KPI. If you're looking at it from an email sign-up standpoint, they want to re-engage with you probably on another device before they purchase. Those KPIs we look at from a mobile standpoint allow us to give us something to optimize on, to plan on, to change our bid strategies on. And then we can really start to understand what impact that has when we bring in the next step. This is correlational modeling. This is understanding when we push out an additional volume of impressions or volume impressions with maybe a paid social activity. We get those impressions out there. And we're going to see clicks, we're going to see conversions. But the real value is actually going to be seen in other areas. It's going to be seen in your lift in your brand search opportunity. It's going to be seen in your lift in affiliate clicks, in your email clicks, kind of as that reminder to get somebody back into the mix and taking that next step. As we find those correlations as to where things are working and what's driving what, then we start testing. Then we start to really understand where can we increase overall activity, increase overall investment, and what impact is that going to have on those other channels. And the last one being that in-store impact, that one-to-one connector. This is something that we've been getting a lot for the last couple years, but let's be realistic, it's been here for 10 years now. How do I understand what my online activity is driving to my offline conversions? So we talk about one-to-one connection points, and whether that's with your current data and not leveraging like a live ramp, if you're doing it on your own, you're looking at e-receipts, putting code in e-receipts, when it's open, tags fire, data is captured, it's all about the data. You're looking at loyalty programs. Any ability we have to connect that consumer's purchase offline to their actions online with those loyalty numbers, e-receipts, coding, tagging, data, that allows us not only to say that this consumer came into the store and purchased on Friday the 13th, but we can see the McGavick Capto that they purchased. They were actually on the site on Wednesday the 11th, and they were looking at that site, and they did a store locator search. And by the way, they came to it from a brand search, but 2 days prior, we engaged with them in a prospect and social ad. We made some display retargeting in the mix after that. When we can connect all those dots and have that one-to-one connection point, we can really understand what's the driving force of scalability. Where do we go from here? Now, knowing that not everybody has that situation, this is where we come into the statistical modeling, mixed media modeling, if you will. Leveraging a lot of your in-store data, week over week, month over month, year over year trends, bringing in additional variables. The more data we have to understand what impact the online media has to offline sales, that allows us to take that next step.
So we've got to evolve our way of thinking. We've got to evolve what we measure, and then we've got to evolve how we measure. Now the challenge here is there is no one single point solution. There's not going to be something that encompasses all of your needs, all of your channels, all of your audience. Every solution out there is a portion, a few channels, a segment that we're extrapolating from. We've got to figure out how to piece those together, work with you, find those gaps, and build a solution. And you also have to be okay with the fact that just because these solutions don't have everything doesn't mean that they're not valuable and good. Microsoft and Bing have a fantastic cross-device insight solution. So does Google. Yahoo has some really great stuff. Adobe has some awesome insights. Facebook has great cross-device. There are a number of other partners that have fantastic cross-device insights that didn't sponsor our summit, so I'm not going to give them a plug right here. All right? But each of them has a piece of the puzzle. And what we need to do is work with you to put all that together with the mindset of advanced analytics and attribution.
If you build it, they will come. Thank you. This is not about Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
This is about data. This is about leveraging the data, build the experience to consumers. Experience want that one-to-one connectivity. They want that personal experience. Let's leverage the data, provide them that experience. That's going to give them the qualified actions. It's going to take them further down the path if they feel they're having that one-to-one connection. So we talk about a lot of different technologies. I think Sam mentioned 1,500 at the end of Q1 this year. There's a lot out there. So it's a matter of understanding where do we find those partnerships. We're not competing. We want to partner with the best technologies to help you guys achieve your overall goals and objectives. Whether it's a DSP, DMP, database integration, third-party, in-store integration, whatever it might be. Depending on what your goals and objectives are, let's work together and create that partnership where all partners are working together towards your collective goal. Depending on what we're looking to do, there's a lot of options.
So before we go to this last point, little disclaimer. We've been working on these Insight Labs for a long time. A couple of months, we came up with the idea for the gamification. We were rolling with it. It's challenging to pivot last minute, so apologies in advance.
Yes. So connectivity. It's all about that connection, that deep connection, like a passionate kiss in the purple rain, if you will. Yeah. Fact of the matter is, it's about getting that data in-house, understanding that data, leveraging that data to create that personal experience and segmentation, to drive from a full funnel approach, cross-device, bring it into the mix, understand the actions that are happening both online and offline, to get to the omni-channel point of view we always want to get to understand how everything is working together. It's all about connecting the dots with all the partner sets, all that data in the mix, and then providing the experience to the consumer.
So here's your homework. 3 questions to ask yourself. The first one, is it time for a new measurement strategy? The second one, should we increase our investment on mobile? Now, if you've been paying attention for the past 20 minutes, you know the answer is yes. Okay? So, which brings us to our third question. What's holding me back? And we want you to ask that to yourself and then come to us with the challenge. We want to partner with you to identify the technological limitation, the operational limitation. If your store budget lives with another group than your online budget and you don't want to share, or you can't share, we want to work with you to break down those walls, break down those barriers, and move forward. We're going to leave you with a quote today from Clay Shirky. A revolution doesn't happen when society adopts new tools. It happens when society adopts new behaviors. Your audience has adopted these new behaviors. They're living in a cross-device world. And if we don't move forward and engage with them in that context, we're going to miss out. Thank you very much. On your way out, please drop your sheets on the chair by the door, and we'll have the drawing in just a little bit.
Thank you.